It is now 6 o'clock on Tuesday, November the 19th. This is the meeting of the Legislative Committee for ISD 191. So welcome, everybody. We have a few items that we're going to discuss tonight. We will kick it off by starting with the equitable system for calculating funding for adult basic education students. And we have Dr. Battle, or Superintendent Dr. Battle, Jason Sellers, Director of Community Services, and Susan Edmondson, Adult Basic Education Coordinator.
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you, Director Chester, Director Connor, and Director Roerb. So tonight we actually have a presentation because this will be a new ask for you to consider to make part of our legislative platform. So I'm going to turn it over to Jason Sellers and Susan Edmondson.
Good evening, board members. I'll be quick on the first slide. There are outcomes that we're prioritizing with this presentation, and the short version is this. Susan's going to give you some details so that if you are asked questions, you can answer them. The little bit longer version is we are being isolated in terms of funding as one of only two, well, a jail and us as being penalized for running really good programs that are expanding every single year. And Susan will give you those details.
Hi, so I'm just going to give you a little bit of background on ABE and its funding formula from the state. So the state of Minnesota has a total of 40 ABE programs or consortiums and shares approximately $52 million of annual state funding. The current funding formula is based on 4 parts. The biggest piece of funding comes from the previous year's student contact or attendance hours. The other 3 formulas are based on the census, the count or amount of LEP, limited English proficiency residents, the amount of residents that are over the age of 25 without a diploma, and just a general amount based on the district's census count. The only part of the funding formula that we can have an impact on is our student contact hour funding, which is always based on the previous year's attendance hours. So just a little background. Also written into the state funding formula is the contact hours growth cap rule. This is an annual cap of 11% on the amount of student contact hour revenue growth. This growth cap limits the contact hour funding, which is our biggest piece of funding, to only increase by a maximum of 11% over the previous year. For example, if a program grows 30% in student contact hours, the next year they can only receive 11% more in total contact hour funding. The growth cap rule has had a large impact on Burnsville-ABE's funding because it has restricted the amount of funding we get for several consecutive years. To give you some context of the financial challenge we are facing, these 5 ABE programs had similar amounts of student contact hours in 2024, ranging from about 87,000 to 112,000 hours. Among these programs, Burnsville ranks second in the amount of contact hours with 102,563. The hours are represented by the blue bar graphs. The amount of student contact hour funding in 2025, which is based off those 2024 numbers, is represented by the yellow bars. The amount of student contact hour funding ranges from 488,000 to 982,000. Of these same 5 programs, Burnsville receives the least amount of contact hour funding, about half of what Owatonna and St. Cloud receive, and only 70% of what 196 gets, even though 4 out of 5 of these programs has less student contact hours than Burnsville. This year's state contact hour rate is about $9.60, and Burnsville is only getting 49% of the state's contact hour rate. This is all based off that growth cap rule, or all a result of. So why is our student contact hour funding so low compared to other similar sized programs? It is because of our program's history. From 2011 to 2016, Burnsville had about 50,000 student contact hours each year. Starting in the 2017-2018 school year, our student contact hours started growing significantly. In 2024, we had the 102,795 student contact hours, which is double what we had been averaging just in 2016 to 2017. So in 7 years, Burnsville's ABE program has more than doubled in amounts of students and hours. This next graph compares our actual student contact hours to our student contact hour funding. So in 2016, 2017, we had 48,764 student contact hours, which translated to $290,172 of student contact hour funding in fiscal year 2018. In 2023-24, we had the 102,796 student contact hours, which translated to $488,957 of student contact hour funding in fiscal year 25. So from fiscal year 2017 to 24, we saw an increase of 110% in student contact hours, but only a 68% increase in the corresponding student contact hour funding. So our funding is just very slow to grow with our hours. This next graph shows that our student contact hour funding has been restricted by the 11% growth cap rule every year since 2019, except for the 2 years all ABE programs were exempt from counting contact hours because of COVID. This year's state contact hour rate is about $9.60 per student contact hour. But because we've been restricted by the growth cap for multiple years, Burnsville's receiving $4.76 per student contact hour from the state. Our total amount of state funding for this year is $733,618. But if we could get the full amount, the $9.60 per contact hour, and not be restricted, our student contact hour funding would increase by almost $400,000, and we would be getting $1.131,742 million, 1.1 million. So the difference is 54%. So Jason and I have presented our financial situation to MDE and to LAN. LAN is Literacy Action Network, and they're responsible for developing a legislative platform for all ABE programs in the state. They are currently asking for an increase of $10 million. MDE ran some funding modeling to see which ABE programs would be most affected by eliminating the growth cap, and to model how much of an increase each program would get if we were to eliminate the growth cap and receive the statewide increase of $10 million in funding. So this is MDE's modeling. Out of the 40 ABE programs in the state, only 2 would be largely impacted by the elimination of the growth cap. It would be Burnsville and Tri-County Community Corrections, which is a juvenile detention center in Crookston, Minnesota. If the growth cap were eliminated and the state did receive an extra $10 million, we would be receiving a 95% increase in state funding. Unfortunately, we are one of the only ABE programs in the state that has been largely impacted by this growth cap rule. So it's hard to get other ABE programs on board with our platform of wanting to increase or eliminate the growth cap because we all share one pot of funding. Mm-hmm. So this is just a look at this year's student contact hours so far. So far, it's looking to be our largest year yet in terms of students and contact hours. Our September hours were up 49% over last year's. We have a record number of new students enrolling. We've added 2 additional sections of English as a second language class to accommodate. And so it's disheartening to know that even though it looks like this will be another record-breaking year in attendance, we will only be able to increase our funding by a maximum of $53,785 next year, because that is 11% of what we received in contact funding this year.
All right, so this slide talks about the funding formulas. What I would say to you is the 2 takeaways are this. So when I started here, we were a bottom 5% ABE program, and some of you remember when I was an ABE, right? And now over the past 7 years, including the last several with Susan, because our program started in such a low place, we are penalized even though we are one of the most efficient and best run programs in the state by the growth cap. Other ABE programs across the state have no incentive to want to change because it's a closed funding system, meaning if we get more, somebody else is going to get less, right? And so we have, when MDE was here for their 5-year narrative visit, they shared with Susan and myself and the team that Susan's 5-year narrative only missed, I think, 4 points and was the best narrative that they had graded in the past sort of 5 to 6 years. They also indicated that they understood that we were being penalized for growing so quickly and being such an efficient ABE program, and that they advocated that we speak to the different groups that we could that determine the platforms. The Literacy Action Network we presented to the committee and to the board. There's not a lot of support there, right? In MCEA, the Minnesota Community Education Association, I've brought this up to my own associate, to our association, and you know, when most community ed directors go back to their ABE managers and ask, well, he's talking about this, like, no, we don't want that, right? Because it will impact them negatively, right? Mm-hmm. And so we're really asking for kind of two pieces. Number one, either remove the growth cap altogether and make it a level playing field, because where the students are, and that's the most equitable. Because every year over the past 3 years, I have gone into the community education fund balance to pay for additional teachers, additional staff, to be able to ensure that we don't have wait lists for our community, right? Right. We shouldn't have to do that if we were just funded at a normal rate. So either let's get rid of the growth cap, or number two, and this was MDE's idea, and it's seen here, give us a 1-year exemption from the growth cap so we can level set, right? And if you give us 1 year with no growth cap, what would we get? And then after that, reinstate the growth cap. So it's either let's get rid of the growth cap or give us a 1-year exemption from it so we can level set to where we ought to be. And then after that, it ebbs and flows.
Go back to where
to the growth cap, which was actually an idea that was presented by MDE at that meeting. And so, you know, I think Susan and I are really here just to sort of make you aware of the situation. We're very proud of our AB program. We're very proud of how many students we serve, of how we've grown. But we also recognize that we are in an inequitable situation for our students in our community, and that's where we ask for Dr. Battle's support and your support.
Thank you. I'll kind of open it up. So between the two options, I mean, well, first, do we have consensus this would be something we would want to add to our legislative platform?
Absolutely.
Yep. I would agree.
The slide was very good, by the way, all the different graphs and everything. And when I read this at home, I couldn't believe it.
We thought there were maybe more programs that were affected as much as we were, so I was very surprised that it was really just us. And that correction center, they have no English language, like no students that are learning English at their detention center. It's inmates getting their GED or whatnot.
So as we're considering drafting our legislative platform, and we have the two examples from AMSD and MDE also to add to what we would want to be proposing to go to the board in a work session, would be what option of the two would we want to be adding or considering to add to the platform?
I think it'd be easier to do the 1-year level set, because it sounded like maybe that would not need the policy reform that completely eliminating the growth cap would need.
So we're just to make sure I'm following, we as a district are asking for a one-time exemption, not an exemption from everybody, but this is just our district's exemption.
Correct, because that would not require a legislative change to language.
Okay.
MD indicated that if we had enough support, we could have that 1-year exemption from the growth cap to level set, and then after that, the growth cap would come back for us.
Okay. What do we think?
That sounds reasonable to me, especially since they suggested it.
So
It sounds like the easiest way.
They write legislation just to impact our district?
Well, we got a legislative exemption for our proceeds from a sale. Yes,
Yeah, okay.
districts can come in with
So we'd be
requests just
kind
for
of
them.
doing the same then.
Okay.
Yes.
I didn't realize that was specific. I thought that was just for everybody.
We feel we are negatively impacted, so we would like to ask specifically for us.
Okay.
I like that idea. One question I have, because going through the legislative exemption process with property the last time, it's good to have a bill go forward that's co-authored, cross aisles and all that stuff. Wondering, from the draw of people coming into the ABE program, is it beyond the borders of 191?
Yeah, so because we run such, and Susan, because we run such a good program, we actually attract residents from 196. We attract residents from Minneapolis. We attract residents from Shakopee, from Prior Lake. I mean, Susan could talk a little bit more about that, but we have students from different places around the metro area.
Director Chester, you bring up a really good point, so I'll have to review the process we use. You do want a legislator to sponsor.
Yep. And then the reason I was asking how far outside of our borders do we get students is because those would be the legislators we'd also want to be attracting to agree with the exemption. So like we would want to be having conversations and meetings with them and maybe see if there's a co-authoring option out in addition to our legislators who are very supportive of our district. Thank you very much if you're watching. And also seeking that support outside.
Okay.
Awesome. That's great. Thank you for bringing it to our attention.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
And hopefully we can help make an impact. Next on our agenda, we have just a quick review. Let's quickly review our current year's legislative platform, and then we will dive into the draft from AMSD and the draft from MSBA. So our legislative platform, I have to blow this up, I can't see it. This year was, fully fund mandates and essential services, so reducing the cross subsidy for special ed. I saw that, and EL, I saw that in both AMSD's and MSBA's drafts, still there. Create a permanent state funding stream for unemployment insurance for non-licensed employees. That was still there. Provide additional funding to reimburse districts for implementation of training expenses related. Yeah, that was still there too.
Yes.
So those are, if you both read the drafts, those are still prevalent in both the drafts from AMSD and MSBA. Remove the 15-day residency requirement for students enrolled in online schools. That wasn't in either of the two that I saw. Continue Medicaid eligibility as a means of direct certification for students for qualified for educational benefits. This is a loss of compensatory aid. There was something like that in there.
Yes.
In
then-
both AMSD and MSBA.
Yeah, so they need to continue to look at the impact to compensatory, especially with some changes with Medicaid renewals. It could be a loss of $5 million for us. And
Yeah,
so we
and-
recommend keeping that one.
And I can't remember the language in AMSD or MSBA, but there was something about qualifying students for different services that there was different wording, but it was for this purpose.
Yes.
Provide funding to increase access to school-based pre-kindergarten programs, including licensed and certified childcare. I did not see that in either of those two platforms. Maybe I missed it, but I don't recall seeing that. And then create safe school environments that support all students, increase safe schools funding to expand mental health supports. That wasn't named, but I believe there was some statement regarding safe schools.
Yes, there was one about increase the safe schools levy.
Yeah, the levy. Yeah.
Yes.
And then enhanced support for programs to address grow your own AMSD.
AMSD. safe
Yeah,
schools
so
levy.
they had the grow your own in there and more in AMSD and maybe less in MDE. And then provide improved clarity. Oh, that's already
that
done.
we-
We're
that's
done with that
moot.
one. We get to cross that one off. So kind of in a nutshell, there's quite a bit of duplication from our current one that AMSD and MSBA is moving forward again in what they're proposing for next legislative session. I think we can look at the drafts from AMSD and MSBA to see if there's anything else that they're bringing out that we may want to consider when we make modifications to this platform as a proposed draft for next year. So AMSD they were very, I mean, both AMSD and MSBA had that 3% allowance on the formula. And then the local optional revenue, that was something we didn't name.
Another one was the capital projects levy.
Yep,
They have it in AMSD. That might be one you would consider. It's in that same question, note.
yep. And the READ Act is definitely still there.
Yeah, that's that evidence-based reading curriculum.
And then increase allowance for extended time program. So school districts can extend the school day, week, or year. I would want to know more about that. I don't know if I know much about
I'd have
that.
to get more about that information.
And I don't know if that's something that impacts our district. Oh, where's my mouse? There it is. Yep, and then the levy.
And then I have, maybe they would be policy. Now, this is a funding year, but it seems last session they mixed policies and funding. So I do have a couple of, I have one policy for consideration.
Okay. Which one?
So it's regarding Pelsby, which is the licensing board, to strengthen their enforcement of teachers resigning after July 15th.
Oh,
So teachers are to continue with their contract, but we have teachers who will resign the week before school starts. So just to strengthen the Pelsby enforcement of their own rules, unless the district and the employee agree.
another one that I saw on there too, and it was something that 917 talked about because I think they were it was in district reporting. So the member districts do a little update at the table, and there was two districts that reported being asked for records or data. And so I did see that on MSBA and AMSDs where they would like legislative, where the person has to name themselves as to who's making that request and be also billed, because it costs the districts lots of money to produce that data, let alone going with, with lawyers and stuff, especially if you have to extract information that is required, that isn't part of what's being requested. And I heard that was an interest within some of the member districts, but I don't know if that's, how much that impacts ours. I know we have had inquiries.
Usually I assign a staff member because of the attorney costs. So it takes quite a bit of labor to go through. when you
Yeah.
get an excessive amount of data that's requested. So I know Aaron and I are taking notes. Can you go back to your comment about did I miss the long-term facilities? You wanted to consider that? Which
Yep,
part
there,
of it?
where's-
LTFM?
Where's that one? Yep.
Okay.
Increase the per pupil allocation for long-term facilities maintenance.
Okay.
Facilities maintenance, operating capital, and lease levy programs to recover ground lost to inflation. So that is something that is on AMSD and worded a little differently in MSBA,
Okay. Thank
if
you.
we want to consider. So I know that we also don't want to come out with like a book based off of our current platform and some of the new offerings, and then also hearing that we would want to also add pursuing exemption for adult basic ed.
Ed. Okay.
Are there things on the current plan we want to make sure we keep and maybe update language based off of AMSD or MSBA if there's a slight language shift? And then also of the new items that were brought on those other two platforms, do we have recommendations of what else to add? So like something that wasn't named in these two drafts was removing the 15-day residency
Right.
requirement for students enrolled in online schools. Is that something we would, because we'd be
Well, it's
kind of
interesting. A virtual school you can access anywhere. But say if a student travels out of the country for 20 days, we have to drop them, even though they're still accessing.
Yeah. Do we know the impact of
So-
that number?
No, it's fairly small, but,
Mm-hmm.
so I think it needs to evolve. If you're offering online, that could be anywhere.
True.
So,
And you drop them for how long, that school year? or
till
do
they come
re-enroll?
back
Oh, just they
into
can,
Minnesota.
So, physically come
so they
back.
can
They have-
re-enroll, okay.
Yeah.
So,
I think there may be a task force working on it. I have to check on that. You might want to remove that one. I'll put a
Yeah.
question mark.
and then the other one then the other one that's on here was providing funding to increase access to school-based pre-kindergarten programs, including licensed or certified childcare. That's something that
And they
isn't-
did fulfill that. We did get an increase.
Okay, so maybe we can take that off to replace it with, so,
Yeah. I think people bipartisan understand the value of early learning in
Yeah.
our state.
I mean, I think, and we would have to maybe change language with the safe schools if we choose to keep it on there with just doing like the safe school levy, like calling it out like how
Okay.
AMSD, and MSBA's language I would follow. And are we all in agreement about the grow your own grants and trying to increase our address staffing shortages and increase our diversity among our teachers? I think that one's still important here, especially with our Pathways program. And then the other one we finished. So we do have room to add without it feeling like we're adding too many things. One of them definitely needs to be the
ABE.
ABE.
Okay.
And that might be fully fund, maybe it's up there with
1
the
year.
essential services or however we are with the funding in that
Okay.
first tier. And then, let me find. Would we want to call out the 3% on the formula? Or do we want, because that's gonna, it's a loud message, but, do we want to add that to ours? Because we have just the cross subsidy for,
Director
special
Chair, I
ed.
think one was worded a little differently. Didn't one say 3% above inflation?
Yeah,
And the other one said just 3%?
over current law, yeah,
Over 26 and 27.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah, AMSD says over current law.
And then that local optional revenue.
Okay.
Possibly, yeah, and then. What, do we want to also add or put as an option to discuss in a workshop, adding the increase per pupil allocation for long-term facilities maintenance?
Yeah, they lumped it all one paragraph, as you see. They put the three of them together. AMSD, in the draft at least.
Do we talk about the student attendance initiatives?
Where's that?
It's on the MSBA legislative platform.
Um,
No.
Which one was that in, Director Word?
The MSBA
Okay.
legislative platform.
Yeah. Is that the?
Oh, I see it.
School attendance initiatives.
Oh, they wanted it statewide. See, they just selected the pilot schools, which we are a
But there's
member of.
also-
I think they
they-
wanted statewide.
Yeah, that's a voluntary pilot program, but then they also said school attendance
Attendance, right.
initiatives extend the enrollment drop period for student absences from 15 days to at least 20 days. Facilitating continued support
Oh.
for students facing barriers to attendance.
Where am I missing?
It's underneath
The
the,
legislative platform,
Yeah.
25, all the
Is
way
it-
down at the bottom.
Is that the,
Are you sure that's not the
that's AMSD?
MSD? I'm in the MSD.
Oh, MSB.
MSBA.
Okay, let me go there.
Yeah, MSD, not AMSD. Here's
Was that
the
like going, why can't I find it?
SBA, yeah. I gotta go to that one.
It's at the bottom. School attendance initiatives, yes. Yeah, that's on, so we want to leave or reword what was on our current one about the 15 days? Is that what that is?
yeah, we can change that one too. That one if you
To
prefer the
20?
school attendance initiatives. Okay.
And then, yeah, and MSB also had about the not using the MCA, but the ACT as testing. I mean, I'd be interested in
Want some
knowing
more
if that's
information about
something
that?
we would, I mean, is this something, Dr. Battle, if it's from the high school perspective, is that, something we want to be doing or putting
I can bring
on?
you more information.
Okay.
Because we do have many of our students take the pre-ACT,
Yeah,
more so than those that take the ACT.
right. Oh, yeah, and then there's the
We can
SAT
bring that
too.
for more information at the workshop.
Yeah. And then voluntary pilot program for extended school year allows school districts to voluntarily explore extending the school year. So that's what's also on AMSD's language too, but a little differently worded.
And then I think Director Connor, it's next month, this will be approved, AMSD. So these aren't final, so we don't know what's actually going to end up
Sure. This is what's proposed.
on the final. For both.
And then it says restore managerial rights was under MSBA too. The requirement that local school boards negotiate adult to student ratios in classroom student testing and reinstate the number of personnel in matters of inherent managerial policy. Ooh, that's a broad statement too. Maintain local decision-making and review, modify or repeal existing unfunded mandates where possible, resist any new mandates. It seems, to me, that seems a little vague, so. And I don't know to what extent that, you know, some of this impacts our district directly either, to kind of go, yeah. What do we think about the data request one, where we would want to be able to bill the people or groups that are asking for data?
That would be good.
Are we able to like do a analysis of what we've had to pay?
So we can charge them. I'm thinking it's in policy. I don't think Stacy's still here. I can get back to you. But when it's such an large amount, it becomes burdensome for districts.
Can we like quantify that into our man hours? Like people spending like.
So if you wanted to have that for discussion at the workshop, we can provide more information. Oh, you might know. Yeah, I forgot. Aaron and Stacy are data practices requests, staff members.
There's opportunity to charge a certain amount for data requests in terms of actual staff hours that it takes to do it. And then there is also like a per page kind of charge amount as well. That's a possibility. I will say that this is something that doesn't affect us that much.
Okay.
Primarily because the systems that we have set up where if somebody makes a data request, and we've experienced this where one of these national groups comes in and makes a data request, we have the system set up such that it's not too difficult for us to do a word search and start to create the files and find everything and make it available to them. So we haven't experienced a major
Okay.
cost associated with that at this point.
Yeah.
So
But
understanding.
other districts have.
Yeah.
Yes.
So understanding, you know, priorities for our district, I would rate that low then.
Right.
Okay.
Thanks, Aaron.
Oh. So cause like, all right. Would this be for districts going out for a renewed levy or increased
capital
levy?
one?
The local operational revenue levy adjustment, where gives local school board levy authority from $724 per student to $974 to adjust for inflation.
I think what they're doing is covering the inflation. That's why they want it increased.
Yeah.
It hasn't
But
kept
does
up with inflation.
is that for when a district goes out for a levy renewal? Or is that
Well, this is
like, or
the
could this
Local
impact us?
optional revenue. So I can bring more information about that too.
Okay. Because I think, if I'm not
Yeah,
mistaken.
they're just basically trying to close the gap, getting the legislature to raise it to inflation.
Yeah, right,
So as other districts, we would have access to that. So it is an increase in funding
yeah.
due to inflation.
But I think, is one of our levies already attached to inflation when we passed it? Yeah.
Our operational,
Yeah. So would this be in addition to it?
19 is when we went out for it.
Yeah. Would this be in addition to that then?
Or included in it?
That's a good question. It seems like it's part of an adjustment.
Yeah.
So because our levy is to the cap. So I wonder if they're raising the cap. I can get back to you on that one.
Yeah. Okay. So I think things we would want to bring to a workshop to add would be, if I'm hearing us correctly, is the adding the ABE in, the long-term facilities maintenance, this adjusting language with the student school attendance initiative.
I'll bring you more information about the MCA versus ACT.
Yep, MCA versus, because we may want to consider that. And then understanding this local operational revenue levy adjustment too, because I don't know if that,
And bring the capital projects levy also.
Yep.
Okay.
yep. Yes,
So if
and,
it's stating statutory formula allowance, and then it's just adjusted, isn't that like a kind of an automatic thing? I mean, that's what it
Right, so
means
like,
to
for
me.
example, when we went to the cap, it would go to whatever that cap was. But the cap doesn't, it's not reflecting inflation. But I'll get more information.
It's
I think
not,
that's what
okay.
they're asking.
And then I have a question too about your long-term facilities maintenance. What specifically are we asking them to what? Remove the cap? Are we asking them, what specifically are we?
it'd be
Proposing.
increasing the per pupil allocation.
So it's based on your student enrollment,
Oh, okay.
so they want to increase in that.
Okay.
Yep. And,
Okay.
Timeline. I'm going to discuss timeline.
yeah,
So the
so-
session starts January 15th. We have
Right.
one board meeting in December.
where it's the truth and taxation hearing.
Then you always, the protocol is to present it, was it to discuss?
It's to
then
have a
present
workshop
A
and then-
workshop, and then approve it at the next one?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
to present it and the following board meeting with approval.
all right.
I believe that's how it goes.
So do you want to see this, the new draft at your December meeting, or do you want it to go to the workshop? If we update this,
I think we would want it to go to a workshop,
or not come back to you?
or, because I think we as a committee meet after the board meeting in December.
Right.
So if we were to
Oh,
have a
that's right, 'cause
workshop,
we have the 12th.
if we were to have a workshop
That's why I
in
want to discuss
December,
the
that's when it
timeline.
would be. And to be able to then go to approval at the first January meeting would be, and then I would leave it to officers to kind of go based off of what we need to discuss and how we know the board meetings, whether
So-
to keep it there or push it to,
So, okay, we discussed it at officers yesterday. So bring it to officers and then we'll get the timeline.
Yes.
Correct, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep, because
All right.
maybe the workshop is actually the first meeting in
Meeting January.
January, and then it goes to
Okay.
vote in the second meeting in January, which could be the case too. And then if that's the case, then it's something we could review as a draft for discussion to the workshop in the December legislative committee.
Okay.
Yeah. Great. Anything else? Awesome. Well, thank you, everyone. We are adjourned.